The overwhelming Orc menace. In the cold, unforgiving expanse of space, the Heros system braced itself for an impending storm. From the depths of the void, a monstrous armada emerged, a sea of warships bearing the crude, brutal insignia of the Orcs. At the forefront of this relentless tide was the Orc warboss, a gargantuan figure of raw power and savagery, commanding his fleet with a bloodthirsty zeal. The Orc ships, though crudely constructed, were formidable in their sheer number and ferocity. Each vessel was a patchwork of metal and firepower, engines roaring like beasts of war as they hurtled through space. The Orcs, known for their love of battle and destruction, were driven by a singular purpose: to conquer, to pillage, and to revel in the chaos of combat. As the Orc fleet advanced, the void around the Heros system became a canvas of war. The Orcs' approach was not subtle, it was a declaration, a challenge to any who dared oppose them. Their ships blotted out the stars, casting a shadow of impending doom over the system. The sheer number of vessels was overwhelming, an endless wave of green-skinned warriors hungry for battle. Aboard the Imperial stations and ships, the defenders of the Heros system watched with a mix of fear and determination. The Orcs were not just an enemy, they were a force of nature, an unstoppable tide that threatened to sweep away everything in its path. The defenders knew the odds were against them, but they also knew that surrender was not an option. To yield to the Orcs was to accept annihilation. The Orc warboss, reveling in his might, bellowed orders and taunts across the void. His voice, a guttural roar of confidence and cruelty, echoed through the communications channels, a psychological weapon aimed at sapping the morale of his foes. He boasted of the destruction he would bring, of the worlds he would crush under his heel. His pride was as vast as his fleet, and it was this pride that Captain Vallen Hadan sought to exploit. Captain Hadan, a veteran of countless battles, understood the Orc psyche. He knew that the warboss's pride was both his strength and his weakness. To defeat the Orcs, Hadan would need to be cunning, to use their overconfidence against them. His plan was audacious, a high-stakes gamble that hinged on baiting the warboss into a pursuit. As the Orc fleet drew closer, Hadan readied his own forces. His fleet was a motley collection of vessels, survivors of previous battles, hastily repaired and crewed by volunteers. Each ship bore the scars of war, but within them beat the hearts of warriors undaunted by the odds. Hadan's command ship, the resolute Endeavour, was the centerpiece of this ragtag armada, its hull adorned with the heraldry of the Imperium. Hadan's strategy was to antagonize the warboss, to prick at his pride and draw him into a pursuit. He knew that the Orcs, driven by their lust for battle, would be unable to resist the challenge. Hadan's ships began a series of hit-and-run attacks, striking at the edges of the Orc fleet, taunting them, and then slipping away into the outer regions of the system and nearby stellar anomalies. Each attack was calculated, designed to infuriate the warboss and lure him further into Hadan's web. The Orc warboss, enraged by these pinpricks against his armada, took the bait. He ordered his fleet to give chase, to hunt down Hadan and his ships. The Orcs, consumed by their desire for vengeance, began to fragment their formation, breaking away from their overwhelming assault on the system to pursue Hadan's elusive fleet. In the depths of space, a deadly game of cat and mouse unfolded. Hadan, with his intimate knowledge of the system's asteroid fields and nebulae, led the Orcs on a harrowing chase. His ships darted through hazardous terrain, using the environment to their advantage, striking at the Orcs and then vanishing into the shadows of the outer system. The Orc warboss, blinded by his pride, failed to see the trap being laid. His pursuit became an obsession, his strategy unraveling as he focused solely on catching Hadan. The once cohesive Orc armada became scattered, its ships strung out across the void, vulnerable to Hadan's tactics. As the chase continued, Hadan's plan began to bear fruit. The Orcs, stretched thin and increasingly disorganized, were unable to mount a unified assault on the Heros system. Hadan's fleet, though vastly outnumbered, used guile and agility to outmaneuver the Orcs. Each engagement, though perilous, chipped away at the Orc fleet's strength. The resolute Endeavour and its companion vessels became symbols of defiance, beacons of hope in the dark expanse of space. Captain Hadan, from the bridge of his ship, orchestrated this dance of death with precision. His orders were swift, his strategies bold. The crew of the resolute Endeavour worked tirelessly, their faith in their captain unshakable. They knew that each maneuver, each calculated risk, brought them closer to survival, closer to victory. The Orc warboss, consumed by rage, failed to recognize the peril he had placed his fleet in. His obsession with Hadan blinded him to the true nature of the battle. The once mighty Orc armada, lured into the outer reaches of the Hero system, found itself embroiled in a series of skirmishes and ambushes. The Orcs, renowned for their brute force, were ill-equipped to deal with Hadan's hit-and-run tactics. Amidst the chaos of battle, the Orc ships began to falter. Their formations broke, their coordination crumbled. The relentless pursuit had stretched them thin, leaving them vulnerable. Captain Hadan seized this opportunity, launching a series of coordinated strikes against key Orc vessels. The resolute Endeavour and its allies darted in and out of combat, their weapons blazing, their crews fighting with a ferocity born of desperation and determination. The turning point came when Hadan, in a daring move, led a direct assault against the warboss's flagship. The battle was fierce, the void around them alight with the fire of combat. The Orc ship, a behemoth of metal and weaponry, unleashed a torrent of firepower. But Hadan's tactics, his intimate knowledge of the Orcs' weaknesses, proved decisive. The flagship, battered and besieged, began to falter. In a final act of defiance, Captain Hadan maneuvered the resolute Endeavour for a crippling blow against the Orc flagship. The impact was devastating, a critical strike that sent the warboss's vessel reeling. The Orc warboss, his pride shattered, his fleet in disarray, faced defeat. The remnants of his armada, leaderless and broken, retreated in disarray, their invasion thwarted. The victory was hard-won, the cost high. The void was littered with the debris of ships, both Imperial and Orc. But Captain Hadan and his fleet had achieved the impossible. Against overwhelming odds, with a fleet of ragtag vessels, they had turned the tide. The Hero system, though scarred by battle, had survived the Orc menace. As the dust of battle settled in the cold expanse of space, a profound silence enveloped the Hero system. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a testament to an extraordinary feat that would echo through the annals of Imperial history. Captain Vallen Hadan, with his mere fleet of 12 ships, had accomplished what many would have deemed impossible. Against a monstrous tide of nearly 700 Orc vessels, he had emerged not just victorious, but triumphant. This was no ordinary victory. It was a saga of resilience, of indomitable spirit against insurmountable odds. Each ship in Hadan's fleet, though outgunned and outnumbered, fought with a ferocity that belied their size. They were not just ships, they were the embodiment of the Emperor's will, guided by the strategic genius of Captain Hadan. The Orcs, in their primal rage and thirst for conquest, had descended upon the Hero system like a plague. But not a single green-skinned marauder set foot on the sacred soil of Hero. The skies above the planet, which should have been darkened by the shadows of Orc dropships, remained clear, a testament to the unyielding defense mounted by Hadan and his crew. The cost was great, the sacrifices many. The void was a graveyard of ships, a solemn reminder of the price of freedom. But in this moment of reflection, there was also a deep, unspoken pride. The men and women who served under Captain Hadan had not just defended a system, they had upheld the honor of the Imperium itself. As tales of the battle spread, Captain Vallen Hadan's name became synonymous with hope, with the unbreakable spirit of humanity. His fleet, though small in number, had shattered the Orc armada, turning their dreams of conquest into dust. In this dark and tumultuous galaxy, where despair often reigned supreme, the story of Captain Hadan and his 12 ships shone like a beacon of light. It was a story that would be told and retold, a source of inspiration for generations to come. In the face of overwhelming darkness, a single light can make all the difference. Captain Vallen Hadan, with his fleet of 12, was that light for the Hero system, a reminder that even in our darkest hour, the Emperor's light guides us, and courage can defy the odds.